Great. Hey friends, how's it going? I'm Daniel Nesbitt, and we're live. We're drawing type today. So if you're joining live, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully this should be a little bit of fun. And if you're watching later, then, well, sorry you missed out, I guess. But pretty excited about kind of getting back into drawing some type. I did a live stream kind of at the end of the year, just something a little bit experimental, and discovered that I can put background music in some of these now. So honestly, I'm pretty excited about that. So if you are watching live and it cuts out or does something weird, just give me a heads up in chat. It is still, I think, a little bit experimental, but we're just going to roll with it and see how it works. So I kind of went back and forth on whether or not to do something that I've already been working on or to start from scratch. And I basically just determined that it would be more fun to start from scratch. So that's where we're at today. But if things change along the way, then we'll call an audible as we go here. So to get started, first off, I'm going to say hi to Alex in the chat. Thanks for joining. Good to see you. I'm just going to go over some settings that I'm using because I do have glyphs set up a little bit differently than usual here. So I do have units per M set to 1,000, which actually I think is incorrect. I'm actually going to jump over to a previous font here. There is a rhyme and a reason to this. So 1050 is actually the setting that I want. And this is going to make sense in a second here. Next up in my masters, I'm just going to be working on one weight today. I'm not going to do multiple. And I have some numbers set up. These are a little bit different than the defaults that Glyphs normally provides. You'll notice we're going to ignore the number thing for a while, but I've got everything kind of set there. I think this works out to units of 7 or multiples of 7 is the idea here. And this is what I've got. So they're a little bit different than usual. And then I'm going to jump over to my other tab here because that's really kind of where my magic is going to be happening today. I've got my grid spacing set to 35, subdividing each of those into 5 units. And then I set up my shift and my command buttons so that they snap to 5 units and 10 units respectively, so I can kind of bump things around. So basically what all of this means, if I jump over to the end here, is that I get a bit of a coarser grid on my screen, and as I zoom in, I don't know how well this is going to show up on a live stream, but you'll notice that I get a bit of a coarser grid and then kind of a finer one in there, just a little bit more. And so basically the idea behind this is we're going to start with kind of a low fidelity sketch of the letter, and then as I proceed, I can start to make that coarser grid here finer and finer until we get to the the finished letter, or I guess I should probably put finished in air quotes because who knows how finished this is actually going to look when we get a little bit further along. So that's the plan, and I really don't know how far I'll get in these letters today, but we'll give it a go. So I've decided to, I kind of made a few decisions ahead of this stream here, that I've decided to go with a serif. Truth be told, it has been a while since I've drawn a serif, and I thought, you know what, why not? So what we'll do here is we are going to bring this out to about, let's see, I think I'm going to go about there. And basically what I'm doing at this point too, just for a little bit additional, so you can kind of see what I'm doing here, is I'm kind of pretending like I have a 70 unit by 70 unit pixel right now. And I guess more or less I'm creating a pixel font as we go here. And if I were to really carry this out the whole way, you can kind of see how that would snap together a little bit. But basically what this does is it just kind of allows me to quickly flesh out what this might look like here. And I have no preconceived idea of what this is going to look like. I'm just kind of going with things here. So that's pretty much the plan and the idea behind all of this. I'm probably going to start just by doing something like this. Just kind of see where it goes. So a lot of this is just going to be creating blocks and just kind of roughing shapes out. This may break a number of rules of typography to start with. That's fine though. But I just want to start feeling out the shape of of kind of where we're going to go here. So to start, we'll maybe do something like that. Actually going to kind of maybe bring this down. And if you are interested in this process, because I do feel like credit should be given where credit is due, I actually took a class from John Downer at the Type at Cooper, and he offers a public workshop. I'm going to say periodically because I don't know what his actual schedule is when he does this, but a lot of what you're going to see today comes from the proportions class that he teaches there. If you have the ability to take the class, I know it does cost a bit of money, but I do highly recommend it. And particularly speaking to John's class, he was an absolutely wonderful teacher. Learned a lot about the proportions of letters and typefaces. So a lot of what you're going to see here is the direct result of taking that class. I'm not going to go into full detail about what he taught because we would be here until probably next month, and I would not do it any justice teaching it the way that he did. So I'm just going to go ahead now and get that on people's radars, because it really was worth every penny, as I would say. So that's kind of where all this is going to be stemming from. So just kind of getting this blocked out here a little bit. And the other thing that I'm doing, I think I mentioned this probably quite a bit, is I do try and get my curves and my handles here into nice 45-ish degree angles as we go here. That's something that you'll see me do a lot. Just kind of creates a nice, pleasant curve. So we got something like that. And as we progress here, this is something that I would definitely go back and continue to refine. But for now, I think that'll work out pretty well. So just go through, kind of work that out. Some of these shapes are going to look a little bit wonky, and that's just going to be okay. One other thing that I'm going to do here too real quick, because I have this overshoot, which is 2 of these smaller dots on the grid here, I'm also moving my vertical points here up by 2 dots just to reflect kind of that overshoot as well, so I kind of get a nice curve here. I'm not worried too much yet about the curve tapering into the stem. We will deal with that in a moment, but just so you know, that's on my radar. And all right, so it looks a little wonky right now, but that is okay. Stygian, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Good to see you. Yes, from the other side of the pond. Hope all is well over there. I suppose this evening would be the right phrase for that. Oops. Also notice my drawing tablet is on my arrow key, which is probably not a good thing. Just kind of drop that down a little bit. It does get a little bit bulky on the sides here. And again, I could spend more time than I am on this, but I think just to keep things moving for now, I'll just kind of let that be, because I want to get the serifs in here. So for the serifs, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to draw 1 here, and then we'll see how much I can copy and paste and reuse this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw it out here first, and then I'll worry about turning it into a component. And we'll get fancier as we go, but for now, I think we're just going to maybe stick with something like this. A few people in the chat right now, so I'll just say hello to everybody. Good to see everyone. Thanks, Magnus, for the comment. Yes, it was nice to take a little bit of a break, but as I kept looking at the channel over the last few weeks and even few months, definitely wanted to get back into to creating some more content here, so happy to see that. So I may just end up going a little bit simple on this serif here. I'm just going to copy, paste this, reuse it. And in Illustrator, so I'm used to my right-click menu, which is not there to do my transform, but that's fine. But let's just kind of see how this works. Maybe getting a little bit more context here as we go might help me decide if I'm on the right track with this or not. So maybe do something like that. I don't think that's too terrible. So then what I'll do is I'll just kind of start playing around with some of these other curves here. Something that I typically do for the letter N, I always like to see if I can kind of notch something out there. It doesn't need to be so extreme. I think something like that is too terrible. I do kind of have this 90-degree angle thing going on here as well, and it's a little bit unexpected, but I think I actually kind of like that. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to throw some simple spacing on here, because the one thing that we want to do when we're designing type is design it kind of in context and in relation to everything else that's going around it. I'm just going to pick the letter in the middle here, so I can kind of see the left and the right how things are going. And so this is probably where I start dialing things in a little bit more. So let's see what we can do. I think the first thing that I want to take a look at here is probably the curve on this. So let's start kind of smoothing some of this out. So the first thing that I'm going to focus on is the curve on the inside here. And we'll go back to the curve on the outside. I think something like that. Might not be too bad. The other things that I'm looking at here is that these two are lining up and these two are lining up, because I do want to keep this pretty even as it curves around. I think for these outer ones, this is where it typically gets a little bit trickier for me, because I've got effectively, I'm working off the coarser grid that I've got on my screen here. I've got 2 units over here. I'm tapering it down to 1 unit, which is on purpose. We want it to do that as it curves in here. I think effectively I just need to maybe kind of find something that looks nice here. I may even bump that over a little bit too, or not. If you've never worked on a coarser grid like this, I actually kind of recommend it. If anything, I've discovered it makes, at least in kind of these initial stages, it makes things a little bit easier, because it's not just a very smooth, you know, kind of free-for-all going on. It actually forces you into a little bit of a structure. And I mean, if I'm being honest too, this is actually how I design just like regular graphic design. I've always been someone who just enjoys working with a good grid. And especially if you're sketching things out, and in my case, I'm really not doing this on paper to start. I'm just doing this on screen. It helps you kind of block things in a little bit easier, which I appreciate. So I end up doing something like that. So I'm just kind of seeing how even is this line as it just kind of slowly tapers and goes around this curve here. The other thing that I'm going to do is maybe drop it down and smooth where the curve comes into the stem there. Just kind of play around with that a little bit. I'm also keeping an eye down here in my preview pane. I'm not exactly sure that this is going to be a body face or a display face. I honestly, truthfully did not even think that far ahead yet. But I'm just kind of keeping in mind how this is looking at a little bit of a smaller size as well, so I get a little bit of context as I go here. So I don't think that's too bad. I'm going to move this one down a little bit too here. Just kind of gets that top part a little bit of a nicer curve. I'm also going to bump this over a little bit. I don't think that's too bad, actually. So it looks pretty smooth to me. Because I'm working on a coarser grid, there are probably some refinements that I would definitely want to go back and make to this. But I'd like to save that for a later step in the process. I think that'd be more beneficial. So I'm going to go back to the serifs here, because as I've been working on these, I'm kind of going back and forth on whether or not I like them. And I will add too, if you're in the live chat and you have a thought or an idea, I'm all yours, because I truly am just making this up as I go. So I had been kind of playing with something like that. It was feeling a little bit blocky. Just trying to think of a way to make this a little bit more exciting. Kind of curving in like that is a little traditional, and I guess I'm not in a very traditional mood this morning. So let's see here. Just trying to think what we can do. So part of me's thinking maybe taking advantage of that overshoot there. I don't know if there's something like that. Maybe just kind of gives us a curve there. I think that could be kind of fun. Yeah, maybe something like that. One other thing that I'm going to do, and this is like super getting into details here, but I'm also going to give it just a little bit of a notch on the bottom there. That's a detail that you probably won't notice, but I think it'll kind of smoothen that out. Maybe kind of give it that rounded feel without it being a rounded feel. I like hiding details in like that that you don't really notice unless you're using it at a larger size. I think that's kind of fun, actually. So why don't we stick with something like that? And I'm going to go and add one here as well, just to do something a little bit different. All right. So from the chat, where do I look for inspiration, or is the process creative fuel, or both? So yeah, honestly, the answer probably is a little bit of both. Something that I enjoy doing, and my wife can attest to this for better or worse, is yeah, anytime that we go out, we're walking around, I'm constantly keeping an eye out for letters and things that just catch my eye. It's kind of an ongoing process. I like to catalog found type a lot. It could be on the side of a building. We've enjoyed over the years doing things like going antiquing. It's fun walking into an antique shop, and just, you know, places like that for me have always been a wonderful, source of information, but inspiration is probably the better word for it. That's actually a trick that I stole from Aaron Draplin, which I know a number of graphic designers are very familiar with his work, and that's kind of a little trick that I actually took from him. But yeah, I love seeing, like, old sign painting has been another source of inspiration as of late. Especially if you see a building where you live that maybe it was a sign that was created, 50, 60, 100 years ago even. Things like that have always been kind of a fun place for me to look for things. Sometimes too, especially when I was starting, I would pick a classic typeface, go find like a Clarendon or a Bodoni, and just reverse engineer it. And I'm not saying copy it, you don't want to do that, but something that I've done is maybe I'll study the typeface for a little bit and then walk away, maybe go spend a couple days away from it, come back to it a little bit later, and then redraw it from memory and see where it takes you. The thing that I've learned is no matter how good you think your memory is, you're not going to get all the details. You're not going to recreate it perfectly. And because you're going to have your own twist, your own interpretation of what that looks like, or what you remember. So I think those are probably the big things for me. And it's always fun being able to recreate things like that. So that's typically what I do. More broadly speaking, I know Flickr, of all places, believe it or not. I think there's a few folks who actually have created some pretty cool Flickr boards that have survived over the years on Flickr. So that's always worth taking a look at and bookmarking. And yeah, Instagram, I mean, it's kind of the 1,000-pound gorilla. That, there's a lot of really cool creative people on there. I know I've got a bunch on my Instagram that I tend to follow. but it's just, yeah, it's fun to see what other people are doing. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that answers your question. I mean, the nice part about letters is, truthfully, it's all over. If it's lettering artists, something in your own backyard, you know, it's even been, you know, just random things that I find around my house. If it's, you know, something on the side of, you know, a pot or a pan in my kitchen even. It's something that I really think is pretty cool about type is that you really can find inspiration anywhere. Alright, so as I was talking about that, I was kind of playing around with some nice fun shapes here. I'm actually really liking where I'm going. So what I'm doing is I'm thinking about how a pen might enter and exit this stroke here. And typically, because I've been actually playing around with some calligraphy pens, is I know that you kind of make this curve as you go down into the shape of the vertical stroke here. And I actually really like how this is turning out. So for the sake of moving on, because you're probably sick of staring at the same letter over and over again, I think what I'm going to do, let's see here. I'm going to take one of these. We're going to merge it into one shape. And then we'll do the magic of right-clicking and do component from selection. Let's call this, what's a good name? Let's do serif bottom. Let's do this. Do all underscores. I think there is a right way to name that stuff, but that'd be good enough. And one thing I do with my components is I always take the side bearings off. There we go. So with that one out of the way, we will just do a little bit of a copy and paste there. So we got that component. For this one up here, to determine what I want to do. I may actually just leave that for now. As I get through a few other letters, I may determine how I want to break that up into a component. The two things that are going through my mind right now is one, just to make, I'll zoom in so it's a little easier to see. My one thought was just to take this little serif here and make that the component. The other thing that was going through my mind was, do I take the whole chunk here? So not just the serif, but this little curve on the other side of it as well. And I'm trying to determine how I might use this. It may just be too early to know how I want to deal with that. So to keep things moving, we'll just copy and paste that. And then what I'm going to do here is we're just going to use the handy dandy glyphs shortcut that I can steal the side bearings from the actual letter N. For the moment, I'm just going to move that over a little bit so I can grab all of those. Get that something up like that. And push this all the way up to the ascender line. So I've got the very top bar up here is my ascender note, or my ascender line. And then the next one right below that is actually the cap height. So that gets us a little bit of context there. I think for the H, because it's not like the N where I created a little bit of extra space to kind of create this notch here. I really don't have that with the H. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to grab hopefully the right chunk here. But I'm just going to grab that. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make it not as much as the H was. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of make this a little bit of a sharper turn. We'll grab a few H's here too. So it's a little bit of a tiny detail, but I think it's one that'll make a difference. And this is actually kind of one of those reasons why I held off on making that into a component, because it allows me just some flexibility there. think something like that actually looks pretty cool. Since we do have some more pieces coming along here, I'm just going to grab everything because it's easier. So we'll get those two out of the way. Again, we're just going to stick with the N for now. What other thing I'm actually kind of thinking here? So I'm just looking, there's kind of a difference here. Hopefully I can get this both on screen. There we go. So something that I'm looking at here is on the H, it kind of, this inner space here kind of curves up and then goes down. On the L, you notice I just fixed it here so it kind of holds out a little bit more even and then moves down. So I'm actually going to go back and just make a very fast adjustment on everybody here. Something like that. Again, tiny detail, but I think that'll make a lot of difference. And then we'll just jump over to the I here. Oops. So we'll get that in place. Again, we'll steal the side bearings here. And then for the I, I'm just going to go with a circular dot on this. And then at this point, I just need to determine how big is it going to be. And looks like that got messed up a little bit. Let's try this again. But I think the idea is that I want to make it just a little bit wider than the stem. So I don't know if something like that kind of works. There will be a little bit of playing and back and forth on this. We'll throw a few eyes in here so that we can see a version that isn't in the editor mode. Maybe something like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to my fit curve here. And I'm just going to go, I'm going with the fourth dot in. The fit curve is set to the defaults that Glyphs usually has. But I'm kind of going with a little bit of this squarish feel here. Actually, I'm kind of curious if I go one more. I may do that a little bit more. And kind of what I'm thinking here is this is kind of a more squared off feeling going on here. So why not just give that eye the same thing? And another thing that I'm doing here too, I'm not taking the dot up to the ascender line. I'm actually just taking it up to the cap height. I think that feels about right to me. What I am debating is if it is just a bit heavy though. So the tough part, I do have some snapping on here as well. And sometimes it doesn't really want to cooperate as much as you'd like. If that's the case, it's fine. But I think what I'm going to do is just draw a new dot here. And we'll go with the fifth one. This may actually go one more in. I don't know, I should see two. Does fit curve? No, it doesn't. My curiosity was if the fit curve tool would fix my handles here. It did not, but that's fine. So what we will do is hopefully I'll say the third time's the charm, but I don't think that was the third time. Yeah, maybe we'll just kind of move it around. So maybe something like that. I don't know if that's exactly the be-all, end-all on that. It very well may not be. But if I start writing out letters, or writing out letters, there's a word for that, and it's called word. If I start writing out words, I think we're actually looking pretty good here. And even if I zoom out a good way here on my screen, it looks like it's actually holding up pretty well. I mean, honestly, I think that looks pretty fun. All right. So with those out of the way, I'm just going to kind of move along here to the U. And so if you've never drawn a U before, it isn't exactly an upside down N. As tempting as that is to draw that, what we actually want to do, and I'm going to stick with this side here for the moment, is I'm going to flip that upside down, and actually we're going to do one more here. I'm going to flip it that way as well. I'm actually going to get rid of that as well too, because we don't really draw a U the same way that we draw an N. The serifs do not appear to the right of the top strokes here, so through a little bit of glyphs magic and stealing elements from other letters, we'll do something like that. Now for this chunk down here, I probably will want something a bit similar to like an exit stroke here. So this one enters from the top left, we go down, and then we're going to exit from the bottom right. But what I'm going to do is we're actually going to go back to this here. I'm just going to copy, paste it, move it off to the side so I've got some space to work. And we're going to go ahead, actually I'm going to move this over a little bit more, there we go. And I'm just going to chop that in half. And I'm going to just kind of use this as a starting point. Sometimes that works nicely, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I think we could do a little bit better. So what I'm going to do is I've got this nice curve here, and I want to have that curve here. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to shorten that up. I'm going to rotate that around, and then we're just going to drop this right about there. And then I like to keep my points neat for stuff like this. I mean, at some point I probably merge those together, but effectively what I want to do here is just create a nice exit stroke, and I don't want to disturb anything too far up the line there. So I don't know if we do something like that. Yeah, jury's out on that, but we'll kind of roll with that for the time being. It does look a little bit funky is probably the best way to put it. I'm actually wondering, so something I'm thinking about is if you imagine a pen, which let's just draw a pretend nib here for a moment. I'm not exactly sure how large this nib would be, but let's say it's something like that. So you've got something like this that's effectively, it's coming down here, and then as you're making that exit stroke this way, you know, you're probably doing a little bit of fancy twisting or whatever of the pen to get it down to this narrower serif here. but I feel like this curve here, I shouldn't even say I feel, this curve here definitely would not have this point. It would probably be a bit smoother somehow. So what I need to figure out is how does that get smoother? So I think what I'm going to try for starters here, I'm just going to take all this, actually, maybe we just do it this way. Yeah, that's a better way to do it. And it's worth acknowledging too, this is where that challenge starts to come in with having a coarse grid like this, because I'm not going to be able to make all the adjustments and things that I want to make here. That is a drawback. So I'm going to undo this and hope that I don't crash glyphs along the way, which has been known to happen on this computer. I may just bring it to here for now. Maybe I just do something like that for the time being. And then this is something that I would likely come back to at a later point and revisit. It's one of those things, it's a tiny detail. But it's something that I'm also willing to have not work in the grand scheme of things, because the benefits that I gain from having this coarse grid as I'm putting together kind of the overall shapes, I think outweighs this being an issue. So, but what I'm playing with right now is maybe something like this just kind of goes into a flat serif. It just kind of flattens out instead of makes that curve there. We were talking about inspiration a little bit earlier, and I think this is maybe where I would go back and revisit, maybe some specimens and just determine, is that something that they would have done with a pen back in the day? I'm not exactly sure. But at least for something like this, that's kind of where I'm going to land for now. Maybe there's the possibility, rather than moving down, maybe this is my answer, maybe it moves up. So it does something like that. Maybe that looks a little bit smoother. And then for something like this, I just kind of bring everything down a little bit. Maybe that's a better way to do it. So it does kind of mimic that curve a little bit up here. Actually, if it does mimic that curve, now we're getting into the mind of a type designer here. This is so much. 90% of what I do is second guessing every single thought I've had. Even if I drew this out, I'd probably be second guessing it. But let's give this a whirl, because I like the idea of having some consistency here. So I'm going to let that drop down a little bit. Move that up. But maybe that's just a better way to handle it. So you get that similar intro and exit curve there. I think I actually like that a bit more. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a layer here, because I do want to hang on to this in case I change my mind at some point. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to switch over to that layer real quick. And hopefully I'm editing the right layer here. I think I am. Yep. All right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to move. So this is the one that I wasn't sure about. What is nice about this one is it does have a smoother curve there, which is something that I'm kind of going back and forth on. But anyway, so we'll do something like that. And then if I did this right, which it looks like I did, I now have 2 layers, and I can be indecisive at a later point in time. So I think that's starting to look pretty good there. So we'll go with something like that for now. For the U, again, I'm just kind of being lazy here, but we'll go again with the side bearings on the N. Appreciating the cheerleading, I guess, in the comment section. So one thing I was going to add here now is, as we're kind of getting into some spacing here, I do like the N, the I, the L, and the N here. I like that spacing. It does look a little bit too wide here. For the time being, I don't know that I'm really going to worry about that too much. You know, I probably could set that to something like 0, so that does line up a little bit more. I think we're going to leave that for the time being, though. I think that should actually work out pretty well. All right. So with that out of the way, we'll just kind of continue along with similar characters here. Let's jump over to the N next. I should probably grab all of the pieces there. So we'll just do it this way instead. So we'll just decompose that. Now for the M, this is going to be a little bit narrower in the negative space here than the N was. So my plan for that is I'm just going to take my serifs here for the moment. We're going to use that as kind of the spacing. But I'm going to do one coarser unit of space between my serifs here. Hopefully that works out. I think that should. Another thing that I'm going to do here is I'm just going to move all these up. I probably should have done this on the other ones too, but oh well, we'll make that work. So we'll bump that one over there. We'll bump this one into its space there. And from here, we'll just get everybody lined up. And then usually what I do is I like to get my 2 points here about even back to even. And then I've discovered it's just easier to take the handles at that point and just kind of nudge them around until I like how that looks. So again, a little bit of trial and error, but that is okay. Maybe something like that. And we'll just give it a little copy paste. And I think I'm going to go back and nudge each of these one unit back in the other direction. So something like that. It's not too terrible, I don't think. It does look a little bit narrow. And, well, I go back and forth. So I'm sticking pretty hard to my grid here, which I try to do as much as I can before I can't anymore. But we can get into a word like minimum. That's probably a good word. Maybe this is a better way to determine where I'm at right now. And actually, the spacing is going to bug me if I don't do that, so we'll go back to that. I don't think that's too terrible, actually. So maybe I was overthinking that a little bit. But I like how that's looking. It's got a little bit of fun, a little bit of flair to it. If I zoom out, it seems like those serifs hold up pretty well at a little bit of a smaller point size. I didn't want to make them too huge. I think this is probably something that you would use maybe as a, I could see this as like a subheading, or maybe you'd use it at larger point sizes, get some of that detail in there. But I kind of like how that's starting to shape up a little bit. The jury's probably out a little bit on that, on this curve here a little bit, I think. I'm I think I'm going to stick with it though. Maybe later on in the process, in the type design process, I go back and revisit that, but I think we'll call that good for now. So at this point, I've been playing around a lot with the basic square shapes, and at some point I realized I probably need to go in and do something like an O here. So I think what I'm going to do, we'll write the word noon with a little bit of extra there. So for this, what do I want to do here? So I think actually let's do it this way. I'm going to change it up a little bit how I would normally approach this. So I know I want to have a point kind of in all these different directions. I'm just kind of making this shape up as I go. But I have kind of an end goal in mind here. So what I want to do is this point up here is going to be a coarse grid unit to the left of this point down here. This point here, I don't know, maybe something like that. Something like that. Actually, I wonder. Well, now we'll go with that. So what I want to do is I'm going to count off in units of 70 here. And we're working out the inner spacing of this, if you're curious where I'm going with this. So effectively what I want is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what that means is this one needs to come in a little bit. Maybe this is probably why it was looking goofy to me when I started drawing this out. So if we go back to something like that, and then we're just going to move these all up a little bit. But what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get an even shape here is where we're at. That looks fairly even. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste this. And if you're sticking with me, yes, this is a very unique way of drawing a letter O, but I promise we'll get to a cool point here in a moment. Or at least in my mind we'll get to a cool point. Whether this actually works or not, who knows. So I'm just going to quickly correct my path directions there. And so what I'm looking at now is I've kind of got this outer shape going on here. And similar to the N, I'm just creating these two coarse grid units. I just want to make sure that that's even in all 4 of my directions here, which it looks like they are. And then what we're going to do is I'm just going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to tap on all of the lines. Get our handles in here. There we go. And then at this point, it's just going to be just like the James Webb Telescope. We are going to unfurl all of them. And what I'm going to do to start here is I'm just going to keep things kind of equidistant from each other. So in this case, maybe do something like that. Actually need to go more in each direction, so that should be 3 units if I'm counting this right, in each direction. Actually, we can go one that way, make it a little bit even that way. Over this direction, that should go about there. Again, just keeping the point in the middle of the 2 handles, that's all we're after. Down here, so this one is 2 points, so we'll just do that. And the thing with the O is that we're just keeping things even. That's the name of the game. And for out here, because it's just easier and my mind's been kind of in that space, we're just going to keep doing a singular unit out in each direction. Again, we'll just kind of bump this down. So I'm just kind of thinking in opposites here as I'm going from side to side or top to bottom. So 1, 2, 3, that works there. Let's see, that would be 1, 2, 3 there. And then for these two, because there's only a difference of 1 unit in those directions, we'll keep doing that. So, and what I mean is I'm kind of going off my microgrid here, but there's one small unit of space that separates those two. Because effectively what I'm doing here with this is I'm creating a stress on the letter. And this would be very similar to how you actually draw with a pen. So put that one there. And put it right, that one there. Alright, so it is going to look a little bit goofy. That's by design though. But you can start to see that we're getting something shaped up here a little bit. So at this point what I can do is we can grab this. And kind of what I'm thinking here is maybe have that kind of come down, this kind of come up. This is going to go up a lot. I think this one probably can come out a little bit. And a trick here that I'm going to show you in just a moment is I'm really only going to focus on one half of the O. We're not going to do both halves in one go here. This is where I'm really going to start kind of pushing things around. So kind of what I'm looking at is where's my extreme points as this curve goes around here. Where's the point where it's not moving out anymore, it starts moving back in. And then I'm just trying to match up the points here to where I think kind of that high point or that extreme point is on my curve. Leave those. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to chop that off. And the other thing that I'm going to do as well here is I'm actually going to bump. I'm going to bump it in by 1 unit. We'll go that direction. Because a curve is usually a little bit thicker than a straight line. But let's go with something like that. So here's a trick with an O. Is we can take this, so I only made 1/2. If I did all of my math right, which is usually up for debate, but if I did all my math right, I can push these back together and we start to kind of create a pretty even O there. So I just concentrated on these two here. Didn't really spend a whole lot of time on the top and bottom, but you can kind of see how this is starting to shape up a little bit. So what I can do then is I can go back. Maybe I just nudge these over a little bit. Again, thinking about those entry and exit strokes, or not the entry and exit strokes, but just that stress, because we want to kind of keep it a little bit at an angle here. And then what we'll do is we'll just kind of, it's at this point just kind of a game of just nudging things around. So there's some spacing on there as well. And then effectively, at some point, every good letter has a little bit of overshoot. We want to make sure we include that. So this up here does get a little bit thinner too. So maybe we include something like that in there as well. there, I think. Just kind of nudge these around a little bit, but I think something like that is starting to take shape. So there's a couple things that I'm looking at as I'm doing this here. Number one is just, you know, keeping lines and shapes even, and you know, I'm not really getting any goofy weight or anything in any of the strokes here. The other thing that I'm actually looking at isn't so much the overall shape at the moment. It's something that I'm kind of keeping in the back of my mind. But I'm looking at the negative space of the O here, and how does that compare to the negative space of the N? If there's one like trick or secret about type design, is it's as much the positive shapes that you draw as it is the negative space that you create. And it's kind of something that took me a little while to kind of have my mind like bend around to that, because it can be a lot to think about, and it's back to why I like this grid. Working on this grid is it kind of forces me to think about it, but it's also easier to visualize as well. And what you'll notice if you focus on something like that is you'll see almost an instant improvement in your letter forms if you're keeping that in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to widen that out just a touch. Oops. My pen is ever so slightly my microphone, it's just high enough that the top of my pen, I use a Wacom tablet as I do this, just thwacks the top of it there a little bit. So apologies to any headphone wearers. All right. So because I have snapping on too, it's not going to get to the exact spacing that I want here. So that'll be off maybe just a little bit. But if we zoom back out here, I'd say that looks pretty decent. Actually, we'll kind of use that to zoom down a little bit. So the negative space of that O does look a little on the heavy side. But this is where I'm just going to kind of nudge things down a little bit and see how things shape up. The other thing, because I've got my grid snapping on here, I'll just kind of get those snapped back into place. I'm going to do one more cut and paste here. So that way that I know if I've made any small minute errors in this, that we're just effectively getting rid of those. There we go, everybody snaps back into place. I think I've got an extra shape floating around here somewhere, possibly. There we go. Maybe a couple extra shapes floating around here. There we go. Now we got them all. Alright. So I think that looks a little bit better. Pretty happy with that. So we'll just go back to our spacing there. And I'd say that's pretty serviceable for what we're after. One thing I could do is I could just take the N and overlay it a little bit. So what I'm looking at here is kind of how those curves line up with each other. I do have a little bit of extra space on the side here, like I was mentioning. You know, as far as the width of the O, I mean, maybe bump it in a little bit more. I may just kind of, I may just kind of go with that. So it is a little bit narrower. Let's put the N back over that. Yeah, I think I actually like that a little bit more. It kind of evens out the what I'm doing there. So, because I moved everything around, I'm just going to check. It looks like all of my points here are about where I want them. I'm just making sure that they're snapping to the grid in all those different places. Once again, one final time, we'll just kind of do all my spacing there. So there we go. All right. So I'd say that's pretty good. And at this point, it's just easy to start ripping letters off now. So what I'm going to do is we're going to grab that N. We're going to make a P here. And I'm going to grab all the pieces I don't want. And at this point, this just gives me a couple more tools now that I can use, or elements or pieces, components, what have you. We can start going through and creating more letters. Now for the P, what I'm going to do is I kind of like how this shape is working out here. So I'm going to steal this little chunk of the curve on the N here. Then I'm going to go back to the O. And effectively what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the outer part of the O to create the rest of the P here. So for that, we'll snap those two outer ones in place. And then some decisions for the inner one here. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull all of those in. And usually that gets me something serviceable. But I do have some work along the bottom here. So I think to start, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw an O in the background here. Well, I don't know, maybe not throw an O in the background there. Because I think what I want to do is just kind of thin this up a little bit. I don't even think it needs to go that much either, which is probably some good news. Maybe something like that. And then just kind of determine here how things are looking. This, I may even bring these down a little bit more. Just kind of keep that nice and smooth. I'm curious. One trick that I do pull from time to time here is we're going to throw a few points in here. And we talk about overshoot on things like X heights and baselines and that kind of thing. It is totally 100% fair game to throw an overshoot there too. And that's exactly what I'm going to do here. As soon as I get everything to cooperate the way I want. I don't know that this is the best way to necessarily do it, but kind of gets what I'm after here. I think Glyphs is also getting a little bit cranky with the way I'm going about this. Maybe we'll do something like that. So, kind of creates that shape. I can just go through and delete that. So I've got a little bit of a notch there, and basically that just allows me to effectively have an overshoot within a character. So there's a fun trick of the trade. And then at this point, I'll throw a few more on the screen here just so I can kind of see how this is shaping up. And if I back out a little bit, I'd say that's actually looking pretty good. And then at this point, we'll just go through, we'll adjust these points here so that they are at the apex of the curve and about midway between the 2 points that I drew. I think that looks pretty good. Those I think we're doing all right. And there we go. So there's a pretty decent looking letter P, if I say so myself. And then at this point, we can start playing around with a few other shapes here. So I'm going to go to the B, and I'm going to get rid of this point here. I'm actually going to bring the U back up because I want to steal that point. And make sure that we get everybody selected. And rotate that around. And there we go. I'm also just going to push this, just kind of, push it down out of the way for a little bit. And then what I'm going to do, we'll move that up, and we will move we'll do it this way. So we'll move all of you up. I think if I did this right, I'm just going to throw the H into the background here. I did not do it right. I'm just going to steal a few more elements on. But what I'm going to do is grab all of you. So I've got a few pieces that I want to keep around here. So we're just going to cut that off there. Let's see, what else do I want to get rid of? I think it was this one that I want to get rid of. Is that right? Yep, that looks right. So there's going to be multiple letters kind of crashing together here all at once. But this is what makes it fun, right? So I'll grab that. I'm just going to make that a little bit shorter so maybe it's a little bit easier to push around. So that's where the magic happens. It really is kind of mind-boggling how much you can just rip off pieces from other letters when it comes to type. And sometimes it's stuff that you wouldn't even consider or think about. But I think something like that looks alright. And then for this shape, what I'm going to do is we're going to do the N on one side and the O on the other. Now in this case, because it's the N and the O have the same side bearings for the moment, it's not going to really do anything. But as I go further along, I like having all of these aliases put in place so that when the N and the O actually do have separate spacing pairs or spacing numbers, I don't have to worry about going back and updating anything. Everything just kind of takes care of itself. So with the B out of the way, let's do the D next. And for this, I am going to flip it around. But now the trick is, I want that stress to go that way. So all I did, which was probably not so easy to see, but I flipped the bowl around. So now the stress goes this way instead of that way. That's all the trick was. And then for the top up here, because the entry stroke comes in from the other direction, I'll just nudge that over there. And that gets us a serviceable D for the time being, which I think should work out pretty well. And then naturally Q. So we'll take that. And then for this, of something similar to the B, what I did for the B there. What we'll do is we'll take that, we'll rotate that around. And again, if you're joining a little bit late, this is all kind of what I would deem rough draft work right now. As I go further along, I would definitely want to make sure that that I start refining this a bit more. But at least to get things started, to get a few characters sketched out on the screen, I think something like this will work out just fine. So. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, just realized what I was doing as I was doing it. I'm going to go through and I'm going to retake this from the N. And then we'll just reshape this a little bit. Flip this around. And then we get that similar curve that we wanted with the N over here. It does make kind of a goofy looking A. I'm probably not going to do this for the A. But if there's anything I've learned is that I've said that at some point when I do DA, which I don't think will be on the live stream today, but something tells me that future me will have the last laugh when I probably do something very similar. So we'll see how that goes. So I've got something like that for the Q. I'm not honestly super thrilled with how that looks. Maybe the Q just does something similar to what the P did. And maybe that's a better way to do it. Yeah, I think so. So again, we'll throw the side bearings on either side there. And, I mean, it's decent. It's one of those classic could be better kind of things, could be worse, but, I mean, I'm not upset with it either. So if I throw some words on the screen here, trying to think of what letters that I've got. I don't think I can write the word number. But we can do hull, nil. Of course, we had minimum earlier. And I just want to start throwing some of these letters on the screen because it just allows me to step back a little bit and determine how this is all looking and working. Which I don't think it's actually too bad. I know this is kind of a funny word to put, but even the word dumb. Or we could maybe do dump. Maybe that's a nicer word to put on here. Oops. Bid. But I mean, it's looking decent. It's, you know, at this point, I'd maybe, you know, reconsider a few details here and there as I go, but, I mean, honestly, for a serif, just getting things started here, I don't see anything overly terrible with anything. About 1,000 things that I'd probably want to do to refine shapes or things, but, I think we're moving along pretty well. Jumping back to kind of the overall screen here, I think I'm probably just focusing on lowercase today for the time being. So a couple directions I can go. Maybe we go with that R, because I've got just enough with the N here. And what we want to do for this is we'll get rid of a few things here, and we're not going to leave it like this. I don't want to do it that way. But what we do want to do is I'm actually going to drop this down a little bit, maybe even kind of widen that out just a touch, because what I'm going to do now is I want to make sure that this is at least somewhat similar in weight to the N. I think for fun, I want to see if I can put a ball terminal on this. This could be a bad idea, but it's a live stream and I'm having fun, so we'll see if this actually works. I'm gonna do something like that, and I'm gonna just go right away to my fit curve preset there. Sophia, hey, great to see you. Glad that you made it. Alright. Just attempting a ball terminal here and debating if this was a mistake or not, but we'll see how this goes. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to grab the knife tool here. Actually, no, I'm not going to grab the knife tool. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to maybe drop this down a little bit. And kind of what I'm thinking with this is... so as this comes down, this is going to kind of have its initial curve, and then as it curves, it's going to kind of do one of those things where just progressively the curve tightens up as we go in here. So that's the plan. Let's see if it actually works. So I think what I'm going to have it maybe do is something down like that. And if it does curve in, that also means that this point here would actually kind of start to make its way in a little bit more. Okay, maybe this actually wasn't a bad idea after all. Potentially. The jury's out just a little bit longer, but I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there. I think my grid is kind of coming back to bite me just a little bit, but that's okay. We'll sort it out. I don't know, maybe something like that. I don't know, does that deserve to go in a little bit more? Maybe it does. We're gonna let the grid dictate things just a little bit here and see how it goes. And I mean, the thing too is I don't think this needs to be like a big old chunker of a ball terminal. Something like that. It's not terrible. It's not terrible. The other thing that I'm going to do here, actually, I've just kind of decided as we go here, is I'm also going to narrow this up ever so slightly, because I don't think the R really needs to take up a ton of space in either direction. So we'll see how that goes, and so just going to do the side bearings of the end for a little bit. Also going to put up the word, well, room, but very misspelled. And I think what we'll maybe do here is maybe something like that. I think that kind of works. The other thing that I'm going to take a look at here, I almost kind of wish I had the V, because I could write vroom. The other thing that I'm gonna do is ever so slightly just kind of thinking of how this kind of curves down here. Actually, does maybe go that way instead. Maybe that's a better way to do it. Yeah, I think I like that a little bit more. So I don't know. It does something a little bit fun. And it's a ball terminal. But maybe what this all needs to do is just go up ever so slightly. And then we'll just kind of adjust things as we go here. A lot of this is just going to be trial and error a little bit, but there we go. Not too bad. But there we go. An R with a ball terminal. That actually turned out a lot better than I thought it would, if I'm completely honest. I love when that happens. Excellent. So if I've done something like that, I think it only stands to reason that I go over to the C here and we make that happen for the C too. I'm gonna start with the O for this, and we will just decompose that. For this, I don't know exactly how this is gonna go yet, but I know that this side needs to be open. Of course, that's gonna make it look a little bit goofy. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna shamelessly take all of that. Actually, I just used the cut command, so let's try this again. There we go. And I don't know, we'll see. Maybe something like that. Stretches those out a little bit. That's fine though. And we'll get all of these kind of back into commission. So for that, I think that gets a little bit thick as we kind of go down there. That I want to move here. Kind of move that up a little bit. For something like this, the other thing that I'm also considering too is how this here relates to this down here. And we'll see how that goes. What I could do is I could throw the O in the background here. This is something that I've done quite a bit in the past. But maybe I just use that to kind of, I guess, cheat my way into a shape that I want. What does make that kind of tough, though, is undo is going to give me a little bit of trouble, but there we go. Maybe something like that. So it does kind of curve down a little bit the way I want. As far as this chunk that goes in here, that does look a little bit goofy to me. So what I'm going to do is, let's see here. Gotta figure out what's gonna make that happy. And I also gotta figure out where my point is for that too. This could be a thing where a lot of different points going on here. Or did I just get rid of my point? Ah, I was hiding behind that one. Alright. Just kind of move this guy out of the way here for a little bit. Alright, so what I may end up doing is just, this may just kind of end up not being a 90-degree angle, which is fine if it isn't. And then we'll just kind of move that over until I get something that I like. Just kind of move everybody over there a little bit. Move it down some to give it a little bit more thickness. But there we go, that's actually not too bad. And then what I am going to compare it to is the R here. I'm just kind of hoping and praying and assuming that that line looks pretty reasonable. I think it does. Alright, and then for the bottom part of the C, this is where I get to make a choice, and after just kind of relying so much on all of the square shapes and closed shapes, now I've got to determine, do I want, how do I want this to terminate? Do I want it to kind of come up and kind of keep doing what it's doing here? Do I want it maybe just to be more of an open counter? This is a decision that we get to make now. I really don't know. I don't know if I really have anything that I can go off. I'm just gonna jump back here real quick. So I feel like quite often, lately, I guess, the part that you haven't seen on the live stream is I've tended to make more of a closed counter. Think of like a Helvetica or something like that. And it feels like it's always the easy way out on this kind of stuff. I've been doing a lot of stuff with grids and everything too lately, which it seems so easy to want to do this. I just don't feel like I should though. Let's go with maybe something like a 45-degree angle. We're gonna change things up a little bit from what I would normally do. So with that said, this is gonna look a little bit funny for a while, but we'll make this make sense in a moment. So I'm trying to think what may be the best way to kind of have this resolve here. Maybe something like that. Something like that. It may even kind of come up a little bit too here. I'm going to throw a few C's on the screen as well as I'm working so we can kind of see how this is shaping up. Yeah, see, maybe something like that. That looks a little bit too much. Just trying to figure out where that curve kind of comfortably loops around. That'll be okay there. And then what I might do as well, maybe just kind of drop that down a little bit. Just trying to think of how this all loops around nicely. And curves are always a little bit tough too. I don't think that really gives me much to go off there. I'm gonna throw the side bearings on there too. maybe something like that. For fun. Could be a bad idea. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But kind of did all this with the serifs. I'm just curious to see how this looks here. Kind of softens that up a little bit. Maybe this even just kind of moves down a little bit too. Maybe that's a happier way of doing it. Maybe something like that. For those who are just joining in the chat too, I do kind of keep an eye on this as I go here, so feel free to weigh in if you're seeing something obvious or if you have an idea or a thought. I do kind of lean a little bit on audience participation from time to time. It's just fun to do, get other people's perspectives on things, especially too in a moment like this. It's someone else may just have fresh eyes, which, as we all know in design, is always good to have on hand. Great to see a few folks that are keeping on. Been at this now for about, what, an hour and a half, I think? So glad that I'm not boring you too much, or maybe it's the background music that's keeping you around. Either way, glad to have you. Yeah, I could keep playing around with this. I feel like curves like this are always my arch nemesis when it comes to creating letters like this. I don't think it's too terrible though. If I do something like the word clump, it's not the end of the world, I don't think. I'm kind of wondering, actually, but maybe I just make this a little rounder. Maybe that's the solution. If I throw an O in there, kind of get some repetitive shapes going along. I don't think that's too bad. I mean, it seems decent to me. All right. I really do enjoy creating things like that. It's just kind of fun, the different shapes that you can get going on in there. Since we are kind of on a ball terminal kick, I guess one other place that would see something like that would be the F here. So we'll just borrow a couple elements from our H, and I think what I'm going to do for this is we're just going to grab the whole top of the C there. Seems like a good place to start. I'm just going to go ahead and close that shape. That's going to be a little bit on the large side of things, but that's okay. And then another thing that we need to do, because this is going into a straight line here, is actually need to thin that up a little bit. Something like that. What we'll do from here, we'll just move that down, move that out of the way, and then start kind of moving all these pieces into place here. I think this is still probably a little on the wide side. Yeah, we'll figure it out. What I might do, actually, I don't know if anybody else does this, but Actually, I might just steal the width of the R here. And maybe that's a good way to do it. We'll just kind of keep an eye on these curves as I go. Doesn't seem too terrible. Actually, unlike the R, I'm actually going to go a little bit narrower still. Let's see how that looks. For something like this. Move you up, move you over. And get kind of a nicer curve going on there. And then for you, probably just needs to thicken that outer curve up a little bit. It does feel a little bit lumpy still though. Maybe that actually can come up a little bit more. Out a little bit. This is just a lot of bumping things around, trial and error. But yeah, maybe something like that. The thing that I'm gonna do is just kind of nudge these pieces over just a little bit, so it just feels like it kind of curves around a little bit more. Actually afford to keep moving around. The downside though is that that curve really doesn't match that outer curve very well. Maybe that's something a little bit better. Could roll with that. Kind of thins out a little bit as we go around too. Beautiful. To keep things moving along here, let's throw a crossbar in here, which is probably a little higher up than I would hope for. But maybe something like that. Normally, I think if I was doing this, I'd probably put it up here, but with that ball terminal there, I think I actually need to give it a little bit more space. So we're going to roll with something like that. And then what I'm thinking might be kind of fun. I don't know that this is like the exact way that you would probably draw this. Which probably means this isn't the exact way that you would draw it, but what I want to try here is we'll just kind of stick with our corners here. What I'm thinking is if we just give it a little bit of flair there. For this side, let's go down just a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of fun. I don't know if it's totally working for me or not. Kind of pinches in a little bit. I wonder if it's too much though. Yeah, I'm not really getting the resolve that I want. I may just roll with that for now. I really don't know that I'm going to get anything else that I like for the time being. I don't know if it helps to maybe thin that out too. No, it doesn't. Yeah, we'll kind of go with that for now. Hey, Jack. Oh, and actually a few people. Wow, I haven't even been keeping up with the chat. Good to see all sorts of people in there right now. Since we have a few extra folks in the chat, I'll just I've kind of been working along on just these those few characters for the moment, but I'll just kind of jump back a little bit and see if I can maybe zoom in a little bit more here and just kind of get everyone caught up to speed with where we're at. So effectively where I'm at right now is I just decided to start from scratch this morning. So this has pretty much been a brand new font. If you want to rewind and watch a little bit earlier, I did go through these settings that I have for this in glyphs under the glyphs info, the font info tab. If you scroll back, I think probably the first few minutes of the live stream here, you'll see all the different settings and everything that I put together for this. But effectively what we're doing here is you'll notice that if I just go back to the end, we'll pick on that. And hopefully this shows up pretty well in the live stream. But I've got a fairly coarse grid in the background here. Now, the thing is, I didn't do a sketch or anything ahead of time. We're just kind of figuring this out as we go. But what I've been doing lately is I've been working kind of on this coarse grid, so you'll notice that there's kind of these bigger blocks here, and then I subdivide that. But actually what I was doing was I was thinking even larger than that. So effectively what I did with my grid was I created, in kind of the back of my mind, a 70 by 70 pixel that I was using then. And this is determining the width of my strokes. This is determining the amount of space that I have between those strokes. Ultimately, it would determine spacing and that kind of thing. This is also set up so that I'm snapping on each of these grid points. And what that does is it allows me to kind of quickly and efficiently create some fairly even letter forms, fairly even lines, spacing, that kind of thing. There are things like the U here was one that I think we had earlier on, where I wasn't happy with a few different spaces with kind of how the curves were coming together. That is kind of a limitation of this process. But overall, it allows me to kind of quickly create some consistent letter forms. I did point folks towards the Cooper Union class that John Downer puts on. It's called Proportions. I don't know when the next one is, but if that's something that intrigues you, he goes into way more detail on this stuff, and a lot of what I'm putting into practice here is the direct result of taking that class from him. So I do recommend it if that's something that you're interested in continuing to explore. But it's been really helpful and really useful because it quickly allows me to kind of build this stuff out. For trivial things like hinting, this ultimately ends up doing you a lot of favors as well, from what we learned in that class. You'll find that as you start building fonts for smaller point sizes, where of course your pixel density goes way down, that you can actually get some pretty desirable results using his methods. So highly recommend that if you haven't checked that out already. All right, so I'll probably hang out here for a few more minutes. Yeah, we'll kind of carry on then. I'm just kind of debating what I want to do with this F. This is one of those things where I could go back and forth and second guess about a dozen different things about it. We were talking a little bit earlier about inspiration too, and this may even be something where I just go back and maybe study. I do have a number of type specimen books as well, which I think I forgot to include earlier when I was answering that question, but I may even go back and just kind of see what I want to do for something like this, this F. I know there are typefaces that, you know, maybe they even do something a little bit more like this, which could definitely be an option, maybe, I don't know. But I can say, like, I'm definitely trying to figure out how something like this looks or shapes up. What I can say for sure is that that crossbar is probably not making the final cut as I move along with this typeface. All right. Well, I think what I'm going to do is we're going to do maybe one more here, and then we'll call it a day on the show here. And I think what I'm going to do is, since this won't take too much time, but I think it'll still be fun, would be the E. So for this, let's see what do I want to do here. So I think I'll just get some guides in place here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and aim for that crossbar to be right about here. And then what we'll want to do is we'll have this come down here. We'll do a little open corner, close that up. So that should get us pretty well there. As far as this goes, we're going to bump that out a little bit more. And get all of these lined up here so I get a nice square corner there. And then I'll make sure that I get back here, get that lined up there. So I got a few things kind of in place here to make that a little more even. And then at this point, I think what I'm going to do here is we'll kind of get all these shapes kind of in place. Might actually do is we're going to go back to the O. I'm actually going to steal this portion here because I think that might actually be easier to work from. And that kind of gets these back to a more consistent point. And from there, I'm just going to go and close those up. Bring all these points together there. It actually doesn't look too terrible. So at this stage then what I want to do is just kind of start smoothing some of this up. So do something like that. It could be beneficial too, and I think I'm going to do this, is I'm actually going to merge all these shapes together. I think some of these pieces are going to be a little bit easier to work with if I do that. So we'll go back, we'll reopen that corner up. I'm going to push this back over here when I'm a little bit further along, but I think what I'm going to do is we're going to move this somewhere about there. Get that line back in. This is going to look a little bit goofy, but we'll get here. I am am going to just maybe push that back into its space there. I know that's not something that you should be doing, but I'll probably regret that later. Actually, maybe what I could do, I think you can do this in bliss, so let me give it a shot here. But I think you can do, yeah, you can do an open corner. Maybe this is a better way to handle it. And you just gotta trick it into thinking that it's not a piece that you want. Maybe something like that, actually. Just kind of play around with it here till I get what I want. So we'll do something like that. Now I've got the stress going top left to bottom right. And then what we want to do... So if I'm doing it this way, that actually it doesn't make a ton of sense to have it not that far. So maybe I do kind of end up going back to where I was a little bit. Tiny bit. I'm only focusing on the outer portion of this too. I'm not really too worried about the inside for a moment. And actually one thing I was talking about earlier was making things consistent. Something I realized we can do to make it consistent. Although it probably doesn't make a huge difference in the grand scheme of things. Maybe something like that. Let's pull this back up in a straight line. So we're starting to get there now. It is kind of unique having this just end here. I think that's just going to be a little bit too much and too distracting though, if I were to keep that. But something that I am going to try, because why not? Maybe just ever so slightly, I don't know, is that dumb? To have that just kind of bend in a little bit? I'm just trying to make this as, or actually maybe I don't even need the curve. It's kind of nice just to have that taper in there. I don't know if it's necessary. Maybe it's not necessary. We'll just have it go in. There is something about this side though that's ever so slightly throwing me off. I may put the end back out. I don't know that it needs to be as sharp of a corner as that. But, I don't know. Let's maybe just go ahead and open this corner back up. So maybe there is some benefit to having a little extra there. I don't know. It does just kind of firm it up just a little bit. Yeah, maybe something like that. Maybe put just a tiny bit of that curve back. So, I don't know, Overall, I don't think it's too terrible. What I might do, maybe just bumping it up is what it has to be. And maybe it didn't even need to go that far. Maybe it only needs to go up. Maybe something like there. It's possible just kind of getting it more in line would help. The other thing that I was looking at too, and maybe this is what's throwing me off, is there is kind of this point here where everything just kind of comes crashing together. And I'm willing to bet that's probably why I was considering tapering this here, but maybe what it really needs to be is we just even it out that way instead. And maybe it looks better that way. I don't know, chat, what do you think? I'll turn to the chat room on this, and maybe some other folks have some ideas on what I could do here, but it just seems so close to where I want it to be. I just feel like we're dancing around the solution here, but one other thing that I'm gonna do, just kind of pulling all the tricks out just to kind of help things out a little bit. Something that I hadn't been doing earlier was making my horizontal strokes a tiny bit thinner, so maybe we'll just take care of that in this too. I don't know, maybe something like that's it, and then we just pull, or do I go farther up, just really change it up? Maybe that kind of helps too, because I know like up in this corner it is a little bit thinner where it starts to get a little bit thicker down as we go this way. Maybe that's the better solution, because I know just, and I'm going off the top of my head, I've seen classic typefaces, was it like Garamond or some of them that you really get that high crossbar on here. And maybe we just kind of go with that kind of idea in mind. Maybe that's the way to do it. All right. Well, I guess it's kind of ironic that I end on the word done. Because I think that is probably where I'm going to leave it for this one. So, yeah, thanks so much everybody for popping in today. Hopefully you had fun. I definitely want to do more of these as we go throughout the year. I have mentioned in maybe one of the past live streams that I've done over the last few weeks that I am looking at potentially starting another just regular recorded series on the channel here. Who knows, I may just pick up from where I left off here. But I'm always open to ideas and thoughts if anybody has anything in particular they want to see. I know we've been doing glyphs quite a bit in the past. I had been kind of experimenting around with some other programs as well. I know we had RoboFont, FontLab, FontForge. But who knows, maybe in the new year, maybe in 2022, you're looking at getting started in the world of type design. You want to maybe throw down a few letters for a logo, or maybe you're already looking at creating a full alphabet. So if there's anything there that you have any questions about, or that you would maybe want to see in a future episode, I'm certainly all ears on that kind of stuff. It's so much fun being able to walk people through the process of designing a typeface, especially if you don't really know where to start. So yeah, with that, thanks so much everyone for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on there as well. I know like every YouTuber on the face of this website says that, but it really genuinely truly does help me out. It helps others who are looking for this kind of content find this stuff a little bit easier. So with that, we're going to call it a wrap on this one. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next live stream.